Welcome to the show. My name is James Nielsen Watt, and in this show, we interview interesting, inspiring, and successful people so you can learn the secrets to success and can play the game of life, business, health, and happiness better. And the philosophy we take here is if I'm leveling up my game, you get to level up yours as well. So get ready to listen to some inspiring people who have figured out how to have success in all areas of life. Health, happiness, wealth, business. We're going to be interviewing them in this show so that you can learn the secrets to success that they share with practical advice that you can take and use today. So if you enjoy the show, please subscribe, please leave us a review, and please share it with your friends, because if I can help you and you can help others, then we can help more people together and we can all level up our game together. In this episode, we're talking with Marco Santarelli. Marco's a serial investor, author, and founder of Narada Real Estate Investments, a national real estate investment firm offering turnkey investment properties in growth markets all over the US. He's also the host of the Passive Real Estate Investing Show, the show where busy people learn how to build passive income and create long-term wealth through real estate. Welcome to the show, Marco.
Hey, James, it's an honor to be on your show. I'm looking forward to this because we had a great conversation before we started recording here, and now I know we can talk about a million different things.
Yeah, we were just kind of going there for a while, and I realized that, hey, we should probably actually talk about some of the stuff in the show because it's interesting.
Right.
And I tend to find that with people because there's just, there's when we've got two people that know their stuff in their respective fields, there's always this juice that just flows, I think, and it's because there's passion there. And I noticed that with successful people, it's we want to share what we're doing because we love it, and that's kind of why we're successful. And I noticed that people who struggle tend to want to hold everything in, and we'll probably talk about that in a minute, but I just thought I'd share that with everyone listening. It's like when you're successful, when you're loving what you do, you kind of want to share it with everyone because it's your thing. So Marco, let's jump into a bit about you. I know we did a little bit on the intro, but tell us a bit more about your journey and where you're at now relative to where you started and kind of some of the stuff that you're working on as well.
Yeah, well, I hate to go, all the way back to, the day I was born, but I almost kind of have to go back to when I was 13. I just knew at a young age that I wanted to be rich. That's what I titled it back then, but really what I wanted to be was wealthy. And there's a difference between being rich and wealthy. But I recognized the fact that I was entrepreneurial at a young age. In fact, I taught myself at the age of 13 how to code on a computer and program, and that was the days of Pac-Man. So I was building a game on a computer that had very little memory back then, because memory was incredibly expensive on computers. And I actually ran out of RAM, the memory on the computer. I had to stop doing what I was doing. But what was interesting about my teenage years is I couldn't drive, but I was getting my parents to get me books and courses and programs on business and real estate and investing, because I wanted to learn about that stuff. I just had it in me, and I needed to teach myself how to do it. Just to give you a little bit of color and context, I bought my first investment property, my first rental, when I turned 18 years old. And I would have done it sooner, but I had to wait until I was 18 because I couldn't qualify for financing, as a non-adult. But I bought my first rental and I fixed it up. I leased it out. I managed it myself. I held it for a number of years and I did very well. So the writing was on the wall. And then I got my real estate license. I sold real estate. I bought more property. And then I started multiple businesses. So yes, I've been a serial entrepreneur and an investor from an early age. Now that doesn't mean I'm special or different than anybody, listening to us talk here today. It's just that I recognized it early and I took action. That's the only differentiating factor with anybody else. Anybody can do this. Maybe it's not for everybody. Not everybody can be an entrepreneur. They're just not fit for it. Not everybody should be an investor, but I think everybody should invest because we need to get ahead in life. You want to beat inflation, you want to grow and take care of yourself financially. But those were my roots and my background. And I took advantage of that knack and that interest and desire to build my financial freedom. And for me, look, I fell, I got bruised and scraped, and I kept getting myself up, brushing myself off and pushing through. And that persistence is what helps people actually achieve a level of success that they wouldn't have otherwise if they, quit or listened to their friends and took advice from people who are not successful or not as successful as you want to be. But yeah, so that's my background. And then I really just pushed the gas pedal really hard in 2003. And if for those who are not from the US listening to this, that's when real estate was really taking off. It actually started around 1998, 1999. And then real estate really started to pick up steam and become, fiery hot by 2002 and '03. That's when I went full-time real estate investing. Coincidentally, that's also the time I started the company as well, because people were coming to me and saying, "Hey, how are you buying so many properties?" And I said, "Well, they wanted a coach." And I said, "No, I'm not going to coach you." And they wanted a mentor. I said, "Well, I don't have time to mentor you, but I can I can provide you property. I'm seeing a lot of deal flow." And that's how the business started, in tandem with my real estate investing. So anyway, there, in a nutshell, that is my quick background.
Now like we talked about in pre-show, you're in crypto now. You're in cannabis as well. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, if regardless of whether you have a job and you're, saving to invest, or you have a business and you're, accumulating profit, you need to deploy that capital, that's those savings or those profits, into investments. And so as I was doing that, I realized, okay, I need to start becoming a professional investor and investing in other things to put that money to work, because I don't want it to sit around, because it's going to be eaten away by inflation. Inflation is there. It's a it's, some people refer to it as a stealth tax. It really is a cancer on your savings, your monetary energy. And so I started investing in different things, and I became a professional investor. And I looked at everything: the stock market. I looked at oil and gas. I've been involved in oil and gas. I've looked at stocks. I've been involved in options. I looked at cannabis. I've looked at crypto. And where I spent a lot of my time was in cannabis and crypto. And the reason for that is because those two investments offer what I'll call asymmetric returns. So it's not a matter of, looking at a 5 or 10% rate of return. You could potentially look at, 2x, 3x, your investment. Now, yes, crypto is very volatile, somewhat speculative. But cannabis has been a trend, not just in the US, but all around the world. And we are seeing more and more people get into that space. As long as you have land and a license, you pretty much are, in good shape. So if you can get a cannabis license, whether it's New Zealand or, one of the states in the US, you can set yourself up where you can start growing indoor and create essentially a cannabis operation where you can sell cannabis. It's been very lucrative for years, and it's still very lucrative today. Will that be the case 10 years from now? I don't know, because it could become commoditized. But here in the US, it's still illegal, technically speaking, at the federal level, but it's legal in most states at the state level. And the federal government's not getting in the way of free enterprise and taxation, which is huge taxation for them. But as long as you're following the rules and the regulations and you're complying with all the laws at the local and state level, they're okay with it. They just need to put a framework in place so they can tax it like alcohol and tax it like cigarettes, which is mostly, again, at the state level. But it is a lucrative industry. It is still growing, no pun intended, but the cannabis industry is growing rapidly, and more people are trying to get into it. So, you got to ask yourself, well, how do I get into it? Well, you could be an operator, you can get yourself a license, and you have the land and the capital. That's a way to be in the business. But if you don't want to do that, well, there's a lot of companies, not in the US, but in Canada and other countries, where you can invest in companies buying stock and basically riding on their coattails as operators and investors in the cannabis space. So
It's
yeah.
in New Zealand that it's illegal, and we had a referendum, but the people who are going to be affected by it, we don't tend to go out there and vote as much, and so it's run by people who don't necessarily understand what's going on, and so it didn't pass. But apparently, there's a lot of manufacturing of it in New Zealand, and it's shipped out to places like Canada, which I think is kind of horribly ironic that you can produce it and the government is cool with that. But then if they want to legalize it, but they want to have it, you go to jail, which is funny, but another story, I suppose. But I found that out from a friend, won't mention who, that is involved with couriering and shipping and things like that at a high level in New Zealand. And he's like, yeah, we ship it all the time. So anyway, I think that the interesting thing that I've talked about with people on the show a lot is that when you're saving money, you're losing money because inflation's going to eat it up. You have to put cash to work. You can't just be collecting it, because if you save it for 50 years, it's not going to be, $1 million today is not going to be much in 50 years, just like, granddad bought his house for $10 or whatever. And now it's a whole lot more. When you're thinking about what to get into, though, that's the question, right? There's so many different options. There's fears associated with, is this speculative? Is it volatile? Am I going to lose a whole lot of money? Everyone's getting into crypto at the moment. They're buying Dogecoin and then it's crashing and all this kind of thing. What would you do if you had some cash and you're wanting to be smart about it? Would you suggest dabbling in a few different things to get familiar with it? Would you suggest picking something that's safe, like a fund? What would you be thinking to someone who's a novice but has some cash and they want to make sure that they're securing their future?
Well, it's a great question, but a very broad question, because there's other variables in there that need to be answered, such as how much investable cash are you working with? Someone who's got $1,000 is going to be certainly different than someone who's got 10,000 versus 100,000 versus a million. And I've talked to people all across the spectrum. I mean, we've got clients that have $20,000 to invest in, real estate. They're buying their first rental property, and then we've got clients that flat out say, I've got $1.7 million to deploy, and I want to build a real estate portfolio and whatever else they want to do. So it's all over the board. So the amount of investment capital is one factor. Your risk tolerance is another. What you understand, your understanding and knowledge of the investment or the asset class that you're getting into is also another thing, because I don't think you should invest in anything that you don't understand. Now, you don't need to be an expert, but you should have a reasonably deep level of understanding in something. You don't just jump into, let's say, crypto or even real estate without having built some level of knowledge. So these are the different factors. And there's probably others. I always tell people, look, the very first place you should start, if you're not a seasoned investor, is make an investment between your ears. In other words, educate yourself, learn. I have these 10 rules of successful real estate investing. And my first rule is the first rule on purpose. It's specifically there. And that is educate yourself, build knowledge, because you cannot become a good investor without building a base level of knowledge and understanding. And then, in addition to that, you're going to stack experience on top of that and build on top of it. But once you get to become a good investor, now you can continue to build through knowledge and experience, become a great investor. And that's when you start to see things really take off. You get those exponential returns. So the first investment needs to be in you, yourself, your personal development and your knowledge. Then you can start venturing out into real estate, which for most people is probably the best investment that they can make, because it's multidimensional, provides all these different pillars of income plus tax benefits. For a lot of people, investing in the stock market is a bit of a speculative, venture, because number one, you have zero control over the stocks and the companies that you're investing in. So the lack of controls is one of the main reasons I dislike investing in the stock market. That doesn't mean I don't own equity and stock in other companies. I am an investor in multiple companies, but at least I know who they are, and I'm a partner in, even though I may not sit on the board and make, operational and strategic decisions. At least I am very close, and I'm a private investor, not in a private company, not a public company. So I like stock, but not necessarily on the stock market, publicly traded. So real estate's my favorite. Owning equities in companies that you have close relationships with is another. Oil and gas is fine, and then crypto. Let's face it, blockchain technology and crypto is the future. Everything is being kind of weaved into this whole blockchain and crypto universe that we're seeing, and we're on the very early stages of this. Like it's gonna change, and it's going to change the world over the next 10-20 years, in my opinion. We're just seeing so much change across the world with portable wallets and cryptocurrency being available to literally all 8 billion people on this planet. That's going to have massive implications and massive impact, even in my industry, in real estate. The fact that you can have a title insurance, the contracts, your purchase contract, and anything that's contractual, literally on the blockchain and being automated between two parties that are essentially trustless environments. it eliminates and displaces companies like title companies that we have here in the US. If you can execute a transaction without having a third party like a title company to execute that contract, that makes a big difference. So blockchain technology, I don't want to call it cryptocurrency, but blockchain technology and crypto in general, and these technologies are going to change industries all over. So I think that's a great place to invest, but you need to have some understanding and knowledge about it and know what you're putting your money into. So back to your question, if you've got some investment capital, you've got some savings, you don't want to sit on it because cash is trash. Inflation is there and it will be there for a long time to come. It'll eat away at the purchasing power of your savings. So you need to put it to work. The question is where are you going to put it? That's where your comfort level and your level of understanding and education come in. So that's a long answer to your short question, but
No,
there you go.
it was a perfect answer. Let me ask you real quick then, if you're considering purchasing an investment, let's say it's a fund and it's getting a return of 2%, okay? You've also got to consider that if your return on the work that the cash is doing has to outpace inflation, otherwise it's essentially the same thing, right? Or it's at least just staying the same value but not going up. So these are things to consider, and stuff that I never even thought about until I started talking to people like you and looking things up. And it brings me to my next point, because everyone looks at safety of the investment and okay, it's going to be safe, but is it actually getting a meaningful return, and is it meaningfully growing? Because you have to assume some level of risk, because there is risk no matter what. People think putting their money in the bank is going to keep it safe. It's not how it works. The bank gives you crappy returns just to make you feel like something's happening. But really, when you include tax on top of that, those gains and the inflation, you're actually still losing money. And they're going off and having a party with it. When you say invest in yourself, I think a lot of people don't really get that. Like, you can't see things happening in markets and think, oh, I'm going to go and buy this coin or buy this thing, I'm going to make a whole lot of money. Because it doesn't work like that. You can't say, I've got 10 grand. Do I choose to buy a program to learn all about how I can be a powerful investor and understand the market and know what I'm doing? Or do I go and put that 10 grand into the market? I think that by far the smarter choice is investing in yourself, because if you don't, you're probably going to lose that 10 grand and or not learn anything and not get the full potential out of it. I did that with property. I went through a property program, learned everything I could about it because I saw someone who was doing incredible things. And I said, I basically wanted to throw money at this person and learn everything. I didn't do anything for a few years. He told me not to buy property, which seemed counterintuitive. But then as I obviously don't understand the market and he did, anything that I would have bought, I was buying on one side of the pump, and when I was going to end up was the same place, but I would have paid a whole lot of mortgage and interest and all the things in the middle. And it was like, that was not the right time to buy what I was looking at. And it ended up saving me more money than what the investment cost to work with them. Then I had the experience. And so when the timing was right, I now have three, $1 million properties, and things are good because I invested in myself first. I understood the situation. The same thing happened with crypto. A lot of people are just jumping in and buying random coins. They hear things on the news, and so they go and do it. And when it's on the news, it's too late. You know what I mean? What's the saying? Like if the shoe shine boy is telling you what stocks to buy, it's time to get out of the market. Because
Right.
because
Or
when
the
everyone
taxi
knows,
driver.
yeah, the taxi driver, right? Like, yeah, that's the more up to date one, the Uber driver. It's the truth of it that once everybody knows and they're all talking about it, it's kind of past its point where most of the experts are, and that's where people get burned. They hear about it from their neighbor. Oh, cryptocurrency, you should check this out, and then they go and get into it and they get burned, and then they get negative about it and think that it's not real. But I think that when you educate yourself, you understand that crypto is a coin, is a currency on blockchain, and blockchain's a technology, and how it works. You start to get it, because people in the know, like me talking to you, we talk about it differently. You're talking about technology and how you can use this for various things. It's like the internet. When that came around, people said, the internet's a fad, which is hilarious. They thought Amazon was a fad. Was it Borders Bookshop or whatever was crapping on Amazon, and then they basically don't exist and Amazon's taken over? It's the same
Well,
story.
Jeff Bezos was literally told in the early days to sell his Amazon.com idea, which was predominantly books, to Barnes and Noble. And he
That's it,
basically,
Barnes and Noble.
he basically gave him the finger and said, no way. He could have sold it and made a nice profit, but that would have been stupid because now he's the richest man on the planet. there's so much to unpack in what you said. I don't even know where to start. For starters, I will say this, that, when it comes to savings, putting it in the bank is probably, one of the riskiest places to park your money. And I know for a lot of people that sounds like that's crazy talk,
Well, that's
but it
because
really
we've been
is.
conditioned, right? We've been conditioned.
Yeah.
Our grandparents, have been conditioned, and our parents, and now us. That you put. I saw a billboard. I mentioned this on another episode. It irritates me. I saw a billboard, and it said, for one of the biggest banks in Australasia, and it said been helping kids get ahead for over 100 years, and it's like this kid putting money in his piggy bank, and I'm like, that's not the whole story, because then there's some other dude on the bottom taking it and going and using it and making money, and this kid's money's not really going anywhere by putting it in the bank. But there's this illusion that the bank is safe. Got to put your money in the bank. Like, I got raised like that. You've got to save money, James. I'm like, what am I saving it for? And they're like, well, you might need it. I'm like, well, I kind of need it now. No, but you got to save your money. I'm like, what? And I never got it. And now I understand the psychology of where it comes from. So yeah, I'll let you jump back in again, but I thought I'd just add that.
Well, there was a time and a place where putting your savings in a bank made sense because it was a safe place. Back before August 15th, 1971, we were on a gold standard. I mean, it wasn't a pure gold standard, but we were on a monetary system where the US dollar was tethered to gold, and all the currencies around the world were tied to the US dollar as the world reserve currency. Back then, you had stability in the US dollar. There was stability in currency. It was predictable in terms of what it was doing in its purchasing power, even though it was still being inflated away. I mean, it just went on steroids. It went nuts after 1971 because now all the currencies were just free floating amongst each other's, and that's where the forex market was created. So it was just one currency compared to another. But if you had savings back then, you could put it in a bank. It was protected. You had a reasonable amount of protection, plus you were able to get a reasonable rate of return on your savings. It was, maybe upper double digit or maybe sometimes double digit. I mean, there was a time decades ago when you got a free toaster for bringing your cash to the bank and opening up a bank account. They welcome you and give you a free toaster. That doesn't happen today. In fact, if you look around the world today, a lot of banks around the world actually charge you to put money in their bank. So if you go to them and say, I'd like to park my cash in your bank account or in your bank, they're going to charge you for the privilege of doing that. How crazy is that, right? Those are called negative interest rates. Well, it's actually just a fee, but there's negative interest rates too. So, and here's another thing, if you're in a savings account or you got money in a just parked in a bank, you might be getting like 0.1%, 0.2% rate of interest. Even if you got a full percent, or even let's call it 2%, you got a 2% rate of interest, which is unheard of today for a savings account. It's not even keeping up with inflation. The US federal government talks about the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which fluctuates, between 1.5% and 2.5%. That's supposedly the rate of inflation. But the reality is if you look at the basket of goods that they use to calculate the CPI, which by the way, they change frequently. So they're constantly adjusting it to, make it fit their model of what they want to present. It's a complete sham. But they're talking about a 2% average rate of interest, and that's really the Federal Reserve's mandate, is to achieve a 2 to 2.5% annual rate of inflation, because that's supposedly healthy for the economy. But if you look at real inflation, depending on what you put in those basket of goods, the real rate of inflation is actually more like 5, 7, or even 10+%. It just depends on what you're putting it in there. If you put food and energy, yeah, it's very inflationary. If you're looking at electronics, well, that's deflationary. If you put education in there, it's through the roof. I mean, education costs have just been, flying sky high. Student loans, everything like that has been, just crazy. So it's actually not productive to put your cash in a bank for two reasons. One, you're not actually getting any kind of return. In fact, if anything, you're losing purchasing power every year, because the real rate of inflation is eating away at the purchasing power of the dollars that you parked in the bank. And it's not productive. It's not creating cash flow. You're losing purchasing power. That's why cash is trash. The second thing is that you really don't have true protection in a bank. Yes, we have something in the US called the FDIC insurance, the Federal Depository Insurance Corporation. But if you actually look what the FDIC has on its books in reserve, it is a small fraction of the total deposits that are out there. So should there be a black swan event or a catastrophic event, which, it's kind of maybe a stretch to think about something like that happening. But what if something did happen? There's not enough money in the FDIC, the insurance, government provided insurance, to cover all of people's deposits. So if there was a run on the bank, or a bank crash, or another crash like we had in 2008, where, the Great Recession, there aren't funds. The funds aren't there to protect your capital. So the best thing to do is take responsibility, educate yourself, like you're talking about, and put your capital in hard assets and investments that have strong growth potential, and also can protect your principal, and maybe give you some other benefits, like you know inflation protection, which is what real estate does, which historically gold and silver has done, which we know Bitcoin has done for the last 10 years. So that's what you need to do. You need to be responsible, educate yourself, and put your money to work in places and ways that get you further ahead every year, not behind.
Because I'm gonna sound super basic when I say this next thing, but it's just thoughts in my head, and I'd want you to sort of help me validate them a little bit. Basically, what I've come to understand through talking with very smart people like yourself is that ultimately currency is our ability to exchange value for things that don't naturally interchange. Instead of trading chickens, we now have a universal way of making a trade, so that I can sell my chicken and purchase a car, right? Versus just trying to trade chickens, and then it's very arbitrary. That's where we put our confidence into the currency. Essentially becomes the economy. Our belief in the thing having value is why it has value, and it's why I can't use monopoly money to go and buy things, because no one thinks it's worth anything. But the monopoly money with the US on it is, right? Now, the issue that we have is, of course, there are forces at play that influence the actual value of that over time, like inflation and confidence and changing and things like that. And so what we're looking at is, how do we create value and then store that value into assets and investments that are over time producing more value and or holding, so that the value, let's just call it energy, is staying constant and or going up, so that we're not losing it. Because if I'm buying things that are over time becoming worthless, then the value I created at the time that was worth something now isn't, because it isn't stored anywhere. It's like storing electrical energy in a battery, essentially thinking about currency and value and investments. That's the way that I'm kind of visualizing it and feeling it out. And so when I'm looking at, okay, if I'm creating a certain amount of value for my clients and getting them results, and they're transferring me a currency back that over time depreciates in value, I need to put that currency into something that appreciates or holds in value. Otherwise, the value that I'm creating at the time and the currency that I'm getting in exchange so that I can go and buy things, I'm losing value from it. So it's about taking it and putting it into something that's going to hold, because the dollar's not going to. Is that a fair summary?
Yes, it is. And just to add add to what you're saying, and add some clarity, the dollar, any kind of dollar, regardless of what country you're in, whatever your currency is just a medium of exchange. It's not a store of value. And so people need to separate that in their mind. You don't, if you earn and make money, whether it's from working or an investment, and you are getting dollars, or pesos or lira or whatever it may be in return, you've just been paid in something that is essentially a currency. There's no store of value in there. You can take that currency and you can go and buy those chickens. I can get those chickens from you, or that car, right? And then all we've done is we've just exchanged something we agree on that is a medium of exchange, so we can transact. Because you may have 4 chickens and I have a wheelbarrow. You don't want my wheelbarrow, but I want your chickens. But there's no exchange there. But if we both agree that we could use currency to make that exchange, to facilitate that transaction, then we can exchange that currency, and I can buy what you have to offer, and then you can take that currency and go and buy something you want from someone else because they have something you want. So it's just a way for us to facilitate transactions, but it is not a store of value. A store of value is something that you can exchange that currency for, like gold, for example, protect the purchasing power of what you've earned to get that currency, and carry it forward. So a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you're still going to be able to buy the same amount of goods, even though the price may have gone up for those chickens or the food or the energy or whatever you're buying. The price may have gone up, but at the same time, whatever that store of value was, the silver, the gold, the crypto, the whatever, has also gone up because it's also denominated in that currency. So as the dollar gets devalued, what naturally happens in a free market is the price of the gold, the silver, the crypto, the real estate goes up to compensate for the devaluation. So if you look at everything, when prices go up, it's not that the price is going up, it's the purchasing power of the dollar or the currency is going down. And so the prices are go up to compensate for the loss of purchasing power in the dollar or the currency you're talking about. So this is why I love silver, gold, real estate, Bitcoin, those types of things, because they are natural hard assets that preserve the purchasing power of the currency. So currency is nothing more than a medium of exchange. We use it because we all agree to use it to transact. But that can change. I mean, if people lose faith in the New Zealand dollar or the US dollar, guess what? They're going to shift and move to something else. When you see hyperinflations in countries like, Venezuela or whatever, the people who hang on to that local currency, I forgot what the currency is in Venezuela, but they get crushed. I mean, they're destroyed. They are become poor because the purchasing power is inflated, hyperinflated away. But the people who made out like bandits are the people who were smart enough that early on they sold or exchanged their local currency for the US dollar or gold or silver or something else that was outside the country, outside of their monetary system. So it didn't get devalued or deflated or inflated away, like devalued. And then when they reset their economy and brought in a new currency, whatever that may be, then they bought that currency back with whatever they had bought before that protected the purchasing power. So they had $100,000, they bought $100,000 of a certain asset. A new currency comes into place, the dollar is reset. Now they take that and they sell all or part of it back into the new currency, and they still have the same purchasing power they had before. And that was really, a smart way to play that out with any hyperinflation.
Incredibly eloquent way of putting my jumbled thoughts together. I love it. That was perfect. It clarified things a lot for me that I didn't have the words for, but I'd been thinking about. And I definitely know that a lot of people listening to this are like, James, this is basic. Like, why don't you get this? But I also know, especially my clients, going to be a lot of people listening to this going, that makes so much sense. I understand now why when people say that cash is trash or that I shouldn't be saving cash, why that makes sense, because we're just talking about purchasing power. And what you said is powerful. Price going up just means purchasing power of the currency has gone down. Things are not more expensive. Your money's just more worthless. And I think that's an amazing realization and thing that people don't think about. They complain about things becoming more expensive. They complain about not making enough money to be able to afford things. And ultimately what it comes down to is value. The purchasing power has gone down. The value that you're producing with the work that you do is not as valuable as it used to be. So therefore you're not going to collect as much currency. And then you're going to feel the effects of the fact that the prices also go down. So the value of the currency has also gone down. We see that, for example, in supermarkets, right? In New Zealand, especially, used to have checkout people who would take your object, swipe it, and then press a button, and then you'd pay for it. Now you do your own swiping, and the computer tells you the price, and then you pay for it. And I think Amazon was even dabbling in, I don't know if it's still there. You just walk into the shop, pick things up, and then leave, because it identifies you and charges to your account and knows what you picked up. I saw that somewhere. I don't know whether it kicked in, but it makes sense. Like, over time, technologies are going to advance. The guy who plows the fields with an ox, there's a tractor who can do 10 times faster and whatnot. So ultimately, we all need to be looking, and it comes back to the original point you made, which I think this is a nice way to end off, is that unless you're investing in yourself over time, the value of your currency, which is your ability to produce, is going to go down, because everyone else is getting smarter. Everyone else is getting more efficient. Technology is changing. And if you're not constantly investing in yourself as your primary asset, then you can't play the game today like you used to. And I see that a lot with my clients. They missed the boat, and now I'm bringing them back up to speed because they were stuck in doing things the old way and they didn't invest in themselves. Now they have to stay relevant. And that's super important. So where would people go if they wanted to learn this stuff? I know that you've got some programs and things around wealth creation. Where would people go?
Yeah, quick comment on what you just said. It's actually good to look at educating yourself and that knowledge as a currency, because people don't think about the opportunities that they lose by not being educated and knowledgeable. The more you educate yourself, the more you are able to find opportunities, evaluate opportunities, make investments, and get further ahead financially and otherwise. So you got to be careful not to underestimate the power and value of education. I ask people this question. I'll throw it out to you, see what you say. Finish this sentence. Ignorance is
Pain.
Yeah,
For me,
not bad.
ignorance
Okay, a
is
lot of
pain.
people say bliss, right?
I
Ignorance is
was immediately
bliss.
going to do that because that's the classic thing that you hear, but I've learned otherwise.
Well, think about it this way. Ignorance is expensive, right? It really is. What you don't know is costing you opportunity, money, investment. In fact, not only are you missing out what you could gain, but you're probably losing out on things that you're not aware of. And like inflation, how many people understand inflation? They don't realize that if they're making money and just parking it somewhere or not buying assets that generate income, like income producing real estate, that they're actually missing out on opportunities to grow financially and otherwise. So if you don't know that, that's ignorance. If you don't know that, it's an opportunity cost. You're missing out. It's not that you're looking for opportunity. You're in a place where you're now a victim to the economic environment and the economic system and the inflationary environment that you live in. If you're not aware of that, that's ignorance, and it's costing you money. That's expensive. So ignorance is expensive.
And just to
That's
jump in
why
on that, what people then want to do is externalize a reason why as how it's unfair and it's not out there to help me, and it's these people who have got the money and they're changing the system. And I think that whether or not that may or may not be there, I think that the first thing we need to take is responsibility, that if I'm not improving my reality, if I'm not self-reflecting, if I'm not seeing where there's gaps, that's just nature, because people are going to get better at stuff. And if you don't get better at stuff with it, then your currency is going to devalue. And that's why I said ignorance is pain, because I used to know that ignorance is bliss and think, yeah, what you don't know, does not hurting you until it suddenly does. It's kind of like when you got a paper cut and you don't notice it until you have lemon juice on your hands and you go, shit, my finger hurts. What the hell is that? Oh, dang, there's a cut there. And now it's getting infected because I wasn't paying attention. And the pain comes from loss of opportunity. And you don't notice it until you go, man, I had 1,000 or a million Bitcoin in a thumb drive somewhere, and I don't know where that is. It's that kind of thing. It's you hear it all the time. It's I should have brought that property in downtown wherever, but I didn't. And I think we see it all the time, and it's a lack of education about how things work means that so many people miss out on so many things. I hear it all the time. People saying to me, I'm going to try and figure this out myself, and then I'll come back to you if I need you. And I'm like, the fact that you're saying that means you need me, because you're not going to figure it out. And even if you do, it's going to take you a year longer. And how much is that going to cost you? Whereas just invest now,
Right.
learn and do it, and in a year you'll be in a completely different place. You know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, just remember, you can't change or control the national economy, whether it's New Zealand or the US or Canada or anywhere else. You can't necessarily by yourself impact or affect the global economy, the national economy, even your local economy. But what you can control is your economy. What you learn and what you decide to do impacts your own personal finances and your own local economy. So if you focus on your own local economy, your own economy, personal economy, that can change everything for your life and you and your family. That's really where you got to stay focused. Don't worry about what's going on in the macro environment. I mean, it's important to know, and you should know that stuff, but you can't change it. So just understand it and know how you need to play your cards to generate the greatest returns and make the most money for yourself. That's your personal or local economy. And then, just pay attention to the rest of it, but know that you can control your own, but you can't control the others.
100%. So where can people go if they want to connect to you a bit more and learn more about this stuff and maybe up their game?
Yeah, so the best way to reach me, my team, all our free resources, our articles, our podcasts and stuff is on 2 websites. Our real estate website with tons of knowledge and information and articles and downloads is noradarealestate.com, Norada, noradarealestate.com. And the sister website is the home of my podcast called Passive Real Estate Investing. And the domain name is easy enough, passiverealestateinvesting.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate you as a eye-opening conversation, and I've got a page of notes here that I'm going to start thinking about things differently. I love some of the simplicity that came out of this conversation, and ways to think about things is definitely going to change the way that I'm investing, the way that I look at myself. I've already put down here, read more books. I read enough, but it's like, read more, you know what I mean? Constantly work on yourself and learn from people who know their stuff. And that's what thank you for listening to today's episode. Everything shared will be in the description of the episode, so you can go and grab that. Now, if you enjoyed the show and you want to listen to more, please subscribe, because every week we're releasing new episodes with inspiring people, successful people, so you can level up your game. So subscribe, and also leave us a review. We'd love to hear feedback about the show and your thoughts and opinions there as well. Now, if you want to have more success, whether it's in your life, whether it's in your business, we run live trainings every single week where you can get access to me to coach you through everything from health, wealth, success, business. We're doing topics on all things that you need to live a better, more inspired and successful life. Live trainings every single week. Just visit jamesnielsenwatt.com/live. and you can get access to that. Now, there's also a ton of resources that you get for just listening to the show. All of that will be in the description. So if you are watching this on YouTube, check the description. If you're listening to this episode, check the description. We've got a load of resources there for you to have more success in your life, whether it's relationships, investing, or in business. I'll see you on the next episode. And as always, subscribe, leave a review, and tell your friends, because there's somebody else that needs to be hearing this, and maybe you're their opportunity to help them level up their game.